Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, readers of all persuasions. Welcome back to my channel, Books Uncooked and Caffeinated. It is me, Gayla, on this wonderful Sunday morning. It is snowy outside here in New York, so I'm really easing into my day because after I upload this video, I'm gonna have to go outside and deal with the snow in my car. But anywho, I'm going to get the morning started with telling you the 10 books that I read in January. As I ease into my day, I am having my coffee. Remember, Book Uncorked and Caffeinated, and my amazing Grace Ray Dunn cup. Wow, that was literally the second sip I've had this morning, so I'm really, really happy about it. I'm drinking one of my coffees from Hawaii. I went to Hawaii this summer. And you probably see this here in the States, but I actually got this while I was in Hawaii, and I went there with my cousin, and we are both coffee fanatics. So I bought about 4-5 bags of coffee back, and this is my second bag that I'm opening. I'm probably going to most likely drink this throughout the week. I kind of change my coffee from week to week because I am a coffee drinker and I get coffee as I travel. So this is probably get me throughout February, but next week I'll probably drink something a little different as well. So let's get started with the 10 books that I read in January. I read 3 physical books and 7 audio books. So let's start with the physical books. So the first book is Island Queen by Vanessa Riley. This is one of the books that's on my list of books to read for 2025 for 2025. And so this is the very first book that I read from that list. And so it's about an enslaved woman who was able to buy her freedom and the freedom of her family through entrepreneurship. It's a historical fiction. It's unfortunately can also be seen as a love story because, as we know, with enslaved women, they were often on property of the people that enslaved them and usually had their children. And that's what happened with this young lady. But she was able to work her way where she was able to buy her freedom and the freedom of all of her family members. I mean, even members that were long gone and long sold off into slavery, she was able to find them and buy their freedom. This is a very interesting story. So if you want to read something a little to the left, it is a little heavy. I will admit that there were times that I was like upset about what was happening to her, but she kind of used that as her willpower to move forward. So great read. The next book that I read was The 12-Week Year by Brian P. Morgan. Get more done in 12 weeks than others do in 12 months. Most people who read this would break this down into like quarters of the year, but he doesn't really look at it that way. He look at it literally as 12 weeks being your year. And the reason that he does that is because most people think of a year 365. So they create these goals. And being that you have such a long span of time, you begin to procrastinate because you think you have such a long span of time. But if you look at your year as being just 12 weeks, what are you going to do in those 12 weeks? What goals are you setting for yourself? What goals do you want to achieve? And so he really broke it down where from week to week, you score yourself on the goals that you have accomplished. And it really gives you insight of how you are moving through your year and moving through your goals, whether they're professional or personal goals of your own. I've made both professional and personal goals, and I didn't over indate myself with a bunch of goals. I literally had 3 goals for this year. Whereas if I made the goals for the entire 365 days, I would have had all these goals and then somewhere fell short, where these first 3 goals are things that are super important to me. And so I plan to accomplish them in the 12 weeks that I have. So today I'm entering into my 4th week, and there has been some challenges, but the one challenge that I thought I was going to have was the consistency, and it isn't. I have been quite consistent in doing the things that I need to do to complete my goals for the 12 weeks ahead of me. So this was a good start. Then I was bringing up the rear with my seasonal books. So I read a book titled A Snow White Christmas by Toni Shiloh. I've read, I think, a Christmas book by her each year for the last 3 years. She's a Christian-based author, so her books don't have any spice, but they're super meaningful. I'm a sucker for black and brown people on the cover. This book was about a young lady that was going through a shift in her relationship, and then about a man who had some relationship issues and communication issues, and they found one another in a really kooky way of finding one another. So they kind of helped one another develop their communication skills within a relationship and start a relationship of their own. So it was a sweet little novella, little, I wouldn't say enemies to lovers or friends to lovers. They were like strangers to lovers because they didn't know one another. But this was a great book to wrap up the end of the year. So now let's get into the 7 books I read via audio. And so I'm going to be looking down at my Goodreads. I was going to say great reads, my Goodreads. So the first 3 books were of a set. They have volume 1, volume 2, volume 3. It's called In Love and Struggle series. And these series were about prestigious Black non-binary women that talked about their experiences with love and struggle. And they talked about it through poetry, through music, through just communicating, call and response with the audience. It was wonderful because I listened to these 3 books, which I'll have on the screen. And you heard all the things. You heard the drums, you heard the music, you heard the call and response, you heard the snapping of the hands. And these women were really, really influential in the Black women's space. It was Anita Hill, Cree Summers, Brittany Cunningham, I believe her name is, Amanda Seals. It was quite a few women that most people know, but kind of really deeply shared their stories about being women in love, women in struggle, and how they deal with that on a day-to-day basis. It was a great series to read, and I recommend it. The next book that I read was Scarred by Emily McIntyre from the Never After series. This is book 2 in the series. I think there's 6 books, and I'll have it on the screen. It was really provocative. It follows or mimics the storyline of The Lion King and the brother, Scar, and it was spicy. It had all the peppers. It was doing all of the things, but it was really a good book. And so what I hear is the series mimics topics of like fairy tales and things of that nature. So I plan on continuing the series, sprinkling in throughout the year here and there. The next book that I read was a Black cowboy love story called 8 Seconds to Love. It's a country hood love story. It was book number 1. I think it's 3 books. So the main character, the cowboy, he was like this, this cowboy, this Black cowboy that had all this oomph, and the ladies loved him, and he didn't have a problem getting a date. And then, of course, one of us come along and take his heartstrings and play with him. But she didn't play with him and discard him. They really have a love story going on. So I'm not sure if the series continues with their love story or talk about other cowboys and their love story in the series. But I'm super interested in finding out what the series was about. The next book that I read really wrapped up the holiday season. It was called The Holiday Season, A Love for All Seasons novella. And this was about New Year's Eve. So I actually read this New Year's Day just to kind of round out my seasonal reads. I didn't read a lot of the seasonal reads that I wanted to read. So I read a lot of novellas towards the end just to give me that cozy holiday, Christmassy, New Year's feeling. And then the last book that I read was called Riker's Last Salvation. It's a part of the Crown Legacy series. This was book number 8. I love it. I love the Crown Legacy series. This is by Sherelle Green. She is becoming one of my favorite authors when it comes to urban fiction and urban love and romance as well. I love the way she does the romance. A lot of times what happens is, especially Black people from the urban communities and humble beginnings, we don't get to see our stories played out because usually they're tragic. But in this, she has a carefully created stories about Black people. And even though they had all these struggles, you still need love. Humans need love regardless of what's going on in their lives. And so that's what I love what Sherelle Green does. So this was Riker's Last Salvation in the Crown Legacy series, book number 8, and there's 2 more books. So you would definitely hear about those books moving forward. So those were the 10 books that I read in January. 3 were physical, 7 was audio. As I have said before, my audiobooks I read to and from work every day. So I usually get one audiobook a week or maybe two, depending on how long they are and how interesting they are. Because if they're super interesting, I would continue to listen to them as I do my chores around the house. So yes, that's January's reading list. Thinking about my channel moving forward, I think I'm really going to start doing shorts on Wednesdays and try to morph into doing longer videos. But I'm gonna start off doing shorts, continue on my Sunday videos, and seeing what this platform does for me. Like I said before, I love reading. I will continue to read. I love to read, and being a part of this community and learning and watching other book influences and what they're reading really has piqued my interest in the industry. And so I'm just happy to be a part, still learning the bells and whistles of the tech part of it, but I think I'm getting a little bit better. And like I said in my last video when I talked about my YouTube anniversary, we'll see what this looks like moving forward in 6 months as the year closes for me being on YouTube. Until next time, like, comment, share, subscribe, do all the things that people tell you to do, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.